Greetings, friends. It's hard to believe that these chickens here are just under 2 weeks from being ready to process. This is our first batch of broilers here on our homestead, and these will provide just under 50 chicken dinners for us. We started with 50 and we lost 3. And it's empowering to grow your own food and know that you're producing your own, for yourself and for your family. And the more that we can do for ourselves, the more that we can produce, we can grow, the more skills that we have, the more empowered that we are. The more things that I learn here on the homestead, and the more things that I'm able to do, and the more things that I'm able to produce for myself and for my family, it really does empower you. On the other hand, the less that we can do, the more dependent we are on the government or whoever, the less power we have. Think about it, guys. Good morning, everybody. It's breakfast time. In a way, I look forward to their processing day, and in a way, I don't. It's not one of those things you're like, woohoo, let's go take some life. No, that's not it at all. Now, it is exciting and empowering, as I mentioned, to know that we're providing and producing our own food. But on the other hand, it's not necessarily fun to take life. However, on the other hand, for life to go on, sacrifices have to be made. To be exact, we have 47 broiler chickens, Cornish crosses. We have 25 in that chicken tractor right there, and 22 in here, I believe. And I'm coming up here tending to them anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day, giving them feed at times, and water each time, especially on the days that it's really hot. But the past couple of days have not felt like a typical June here at all. Actually, I don't even know if we got to 60 degrees yesterday. We just barely did. It felt cool. We had your jacket on. I don't remember the last time in June that I had to wear a jacket. This is my first real time of raising meat birds here on our homestead. We've processed some layers before, but as far as our very own, this is our first batch. So looking forward to the completion of this goal that we have. And it really hasn't been that difficult at all. It requires just a couple minutes to just move them and give them water, but it's really fairly simple. It's not really laborious at all, but it can be very rewarding, and I look forward to enjoying the fruits of our labor. I use these buckets right here for their water, and just fill them up so we're all out. So I'll fill these buckets up later and then bring them back with fresh water. Milking session done there?
It's done.
There we go. Look at all that yummy milk.
That's right.
Tasty. You like to put milk in your coffee and tea, stuff like that?
Yeah, I like the goat milk in my coffee. So since it's already homogenized, it makes a really good creamer.
And I'm one of those ones that even on a hot day of working, I'm just give me a glass of milk, and it's like, it just tastes good, it just tastes yummy. But just like with the meat birds, having the milk is just one more thing that is empowering us because we're producing here on our homestead.
I feel like real homesteaders now.
Yeah, we're just,
Before it wasn't as much because we're growing mainly for other people, but now I feel like we're producing for ourselves, and it's just empowering and nice, and I don't know. It
sure is. I feel like we've gone from gardeners to homesteaders, real homesteaders. Not that we weren't homesteaders before, not because if you just have a garden you're not a homesteader, but it's just like we've added to our repertoire of our Batman utility belt of all these different skills and things that we have going on here. It's pretty cool.
You would turn it into some kind of action character.
There we go. Eat it up there, Hazel. Well, guess we'll get washed up, and we have some more things to harvest today. We need to harvest squash, cucumbers, and we'll actually be harvesting tomatoes for the first time this year. It's pretty exciting. Henry Kissinger had a quote, and the first part of the quote goes, "Who controls the food controls the people." So friends, the less control we have over our own food, the more control others have over us. So friends, I want to encourage you, grow as much as you can for yourself, or support a local farm in your area that is growing food, and work in unison with them, and try to localize things as much as you can, and be as independent as you can. Not that you're totally self-sufficient. That's not my goal here, to be totally self-sufficient, but it is to produce as much as I can, our family to produce as much as we can for ourselves, because we have control over it. And I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but with everything that's going on with the global catastrophe, global pandemic, whatever you want to call it, and whatever you believe with it, there's a lot of things I believe with it as well, but overall I do think that food prices are going to go up at some point, and there's going to be food shortages at some point, and the more that we can produce, the more for ourselves, the more that it ensures us that we are going to have food for ourselves and for our families. Right now we're growing a couple different types of squash, and this is just one of the varieties that we are growing from seeds from Baker Creek, and all of them are pretty neat.
Well, we definitely have some that are a little too big. When they start getting knotty, they start getting tough. I would still use this one, but probably wouldn't sell them. You want to make sure that they are smaller and more tender for our customers, or at least that's what I like to say for them. But these, I mean, you can still eat it, that's fine. May take a little bit longer to cook, but that's okay. And if not, our chickens like them, goats will probably eat them, and we'll put them to use one way or another. Right here is more of the size that you want. This size, and even that's getting a little big. This right here is pretty much perfect. Perfect size, tender, that's what you're looking for. Now if you want to save seeds from squash, the ones that you want to save seeds from are the more mature ones. They're the knobby ones, the harder ones. You're going to take those, and those are what you're going to save your seed out of. So if you have some, they get a little big, just save the seeds out of those, and then keep harvesting the young ones. And squash grows really fast, especially if you've had a rain, thunderstorm. Right after that, it grows super fast. Look at these right here. These are a different type of squash, but these will probably be ready tomorrow or the next day. The one thing about squash is you have to stay on top of harvesting them, or they get hard really fast. So we're going to be keeping an eye on all of these. I mean, look how many is in here. So many. And in a day or two, they'll be ready. And another crop you really have to keep an eye on are cucumbers, because they will go from just the right size to way too big in no time. And Josiah, he keeps wanting me to see. Look at this. Look at that. That is gigantic.
Yeah, and we have a lemon one. They're supposed to be the size of a lemon, and it's huge.
We like to grow our cucumbers on a fence, and I see a straggler here. So if you see this, what I do is I just take it and weave it through, right like that. And even sometimes you can take the little tendrils and wrap it around. Sometimes they stay and sometimes they don't. But here's another one. And this way, they will grow up your fence and not out from your fence. This makes it so much easier to harvest and see what you have, because you'll forever be harvesting cucumbers and then walk back by a little while later and see ones that you missed. This just makes it a little easier, and you don't have to bend over and play hide and seek as much as you do when they grow on the ground. And it's so good to see all these little flowers. You know, more cucumbers are on the way. Here's one right here.
Look at him.
All right, well, today is our harvest day, and on top of harvesting the squash and cucumbers like you just saw, we're also harvesting some beets, some greens, and then the tomatoes here in just a minute that I was just telling you about as well. But we're also harvesting some herbs, and herbs is how they say it in in Europe, and we call it herbs here. So I'm going to say herb. If I say herbs, I'm not wrong, but it's also called herbs too. But speaking of herbs, right now Lacie is harvesting basil right here, and basil is a really good herb, and the key to harvesting the basil is it's slightly different than when you're pruning tomatoes. So when you're harvesting or pruning the basil, you want to go with the center, so that way it kind of bushes out and this is not long and stringy and fall over. So like with tomatoes, you'll get the sucker and you'll take that out, but that's not the case with basil. So with basil, you'll just get right there and then harvest that part.
So you can harvest down lower so you have a long stem, because basil really doesn't like cold, and sometimes it'll turn brown in your refrigerator. So what you can do is come down here, and you can even clip this right there, and you can take those off, but you can sit this in water with a long stem on your counter, and it'll continue to grow a little bit, but it'll last longer, and you can just take off what you need as you need it. And so it won't turn brown in your refrigerator.
So I was just talking about the importance of growing food, and you may be saying things like herbs and basil may not be that important, but they can be. There's a lot of health benefits associated with various types of herbs, and basil has a lot of benefits as well. It can help with things like depression and help with your digestion. It really is a really good herb, and you can also add it into your different basil and other herbs to give to your chickens and things like that, and there's a lot of benefits that it can provide for your flocks as well.
And don't be afraid to really cut it back if you want to make a bunch of pesto, because okay, like we said before, this is great sitting in a glass of water on your counter, but don't be afraid to come in here and cut these other ones off too. I mean, you don't want to cut it all the way to the ground,
That's not exactly
but
how I like to do it.
what'll happen is it'll start bushing out more, and these are going to come up and produce more side shoots, and it's going to get bigger and bigger.
And also with harvesting your basil, you want to make sure that you stay on top of it and that it doesn't go to seed, because when that starts happening, it does start to alter the flavor of your basil, and you don't want that. So if you do see the head, I don't have any here, but if it does start to sprout up with that seed, and if you want to continue to use the basil, you want to make sure you cut that off as soon as possible, and just kind of look for signs of that starting to develop. Check out those tomatoes. We've been getting squash for about a month now, but these are our first tomatoes that are coming in. And it's pretty exciting because running a market garden, one of our most profitable items are tomatoes. Salad mix and lettuce mix is also another very profitable item. But it's pretty exciting to see that they're turning red right now. And out of the different cherry or grape tomatoes, these are my favorite right here. They're really, really flavorful. So we just got a few here. And in some spots we have some that are closer to being ready. Some have a little bit more ways to go. And we also have some meteor tomatoes right here and coming along. When we first started with our homestead, we were growing food mainly for our own consumption. It was things that we liked in the garden. And then as time went on, we started transitioning more into growing food for a business, and then we would have stuff for us as secondary. And each year we've continued to want to grow more, to produce more for others as well as for ourselves. But this year is kind of coming back to us again, and at least in my mind, hasn't necessarily been at this in actualization, but thinking more of terms of providing even more for ourselves, and that includes a variety of things.
Yeah.
Because with a market garden, you're mainly focusing on things that are the most profitable things to grow. No need to spend a lot of energy and time on growing things that aren't very profitable. But with growing food for yourself, you want to make sure that you have a wide variety of things for your diet. So that just continuing to think on that is important. With everything that is going on in the world this year, it's made us think about that even more. That we really need to try to grow as more and more things for ourselves as we can. As I mentioned earlier, it's so empowering to do so. That's where the power really lies in trying to be able to produce for yourself and be a producer.
And show you guys how you can do it. You can grow these things. And whenever we lived in the city, we did grow more of a variety of things for ourselves. And I like that. I like having that variety there. And so you have to focus on certain things for the market garden, like you said, but I like, I want to focus on us too and providing for us.
Yeah. And you can call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever you want to call me, but there is a genuine, really concern for the need for people to produce food for themselves, to put the power back in your hands. I don't want to see and hear about any of you, and hopefully this doesn't happen, of having to be in food lines waiting to get food because you're not able to produce food. I hope that doesn't happen to anybody at all, but I hope those of you who are hopefully heeding the warning, listening, to try to produce as much as you can for yourself. I think it's really important. There's a lot of things on the horizon that could affect our food system, as I mentioned earlier, from prices going up with food to food shortages all over the place. It's really important for us to produce as much as we can and get back to that. That's the way we used to live. The way we live now, it really hasn't been sustainable to begin with. No. So we really need to get back in terms of thinking living a life that is sustainable all around.
But also learning about, wild edibles, things that grow readily and they're readily available, even in wintertime if you don't live in such harsh climates. I've always had a desire to know those things, and even more now. So I want to learn more. I think I only know a fraction of what we can eat, but I really want to learn how to identify and be able to provide that way for our family, and not just food wise but medicinally too, because there are so many plants that have medicinal uses, and that's another thing to think about.
Yep, to continue to increase your knowledge even as you're growing, and we're growing, and we still want to grow mentally as well and intellectually, but there's a lot of things, even thinking about being in the solar minimum right now. That's going to have a lot of different effects on our climate and things all around the world that we are don't even know how it's going to affect us with, because we can I've already seen it this year with it being cooler and cloudier and wetter than it has been in the past, and those are going to affect things as well, as back to the food prices and things like that. So the more that we can put the power back in our own hands and growing, it's really important for us to do so. I'm not trying to be negative or an alarmist, but in a way I want to let people know, and we want to encourage you guys to do these things because it's very important. I can't stress it enough.
And not only being able to eat these things for your health, just being outside and in nature, it's a whole other type of healing that you can have, and you get to see these things grow and how all this stuff works together, and there's just something so healing from working the land like we were meant to do, and even on a small scale. just getting outside, going barefoot, getting your hands in the dirt, just sitting and listening to the birds sing. I mean, there's just something that is unmatched anywhere else.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I also wanted to talk about that briefly as well. I really, and once again, you can call me whatever you want, feel like there's a push to disconnect us from the natural world, disconnect us from one another, divide us from one another, disconnect us from our belief system, and that's not good. We need to be connected to this. And these past 6 years that we've been connected to this lifestyle, I have felt like this is the way that people are supposed to live. The Bible talks about the time when people will get back to this way of living, but it really is, when you're connected, we're physical beings, and when we're connected with the physical world around us and connected with one another, it really does provide us with an energy, a connection that we are meant to have. I don't want to keep rambling, but I want you guys to think about some of these things, and I try to not necessarily force what I believe on people, but to get you guys to think and to grow. So with that, we're gonna end with that. We're also, make sure you stay tuned for next video, because we're gonna talk about some things and hopefully maybe start more of these of helping you guys learning to grow your own medicine, as Lacie talked about as well. So that's very important for us to be able to take as many aspects of our life and empower ourselves in these different ways to be able to produce for ourselves. It is empowering. So with that, think and grow on.
Bye, guys.